The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Bliss Business Podcast. Today, we're talking about the workplace. It's no secret that the workplace is transforming at an unprecedented speed, predominantly driven by AI. And it's shifting the way employees work, their expectations, and creating new demands for flexibility. In fact, research shows that 74% of companies are rethinking work models to remain competitive. The question is not whether change is coming, but how leaders will design work that sustains both people and performance. Today's guest is an investor-backed startup pioneering the use of AI to scale expertise in the green industry. We will discuss the risk of leaving AI out of small businesses, once driven by individual skill and expertise, how AI and human creativity and expertise can drive together, and why empathy and humility remain essential to any innovative work model. Please, Mike, introduce our guest today.
Oh, Tullio, I am delighted to, and I know our guests are going to really look forward to this conversation. So our guest today is Ashley Wright. She's the founder and CEO of Plantista. It's, as you mentioned, an investor-backed startup pioneering the use of AI to scale expertise in the green industry. Now, Ashley has been featured on Nasdaq, AP News, NBC, Fox, WGN, and Forbes for Plantista's groundbreaking integration of AI into the garden, retail, and landscape design industry. So now she's also leading the charge in modernizing the green industry with tools that make scaling expertise possible while keeping sustainability really at the core, which we know is critical. So Ashley, we're so looking forward to the conversation today. Welcome to our show.
Thanks so much, Mike. Super excited to be here.
Excellent. So Ashley, you are transforming literally an entire industry by blending AI with sustainable practices. What inspired you to build Plantista, and how has your journey shaped your view of the future of work?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the question. And it goes back quite a ways. So I actually grew up in this industry in small town Illinois way back when. My mom had a high school education. She was laid off from the factory that she worked at when I was in second grade. And the state of Illinois actually had a program at the time where they would pay for you to receive an associate's degree if you didn't have any education beyond high school. So she chose a horticulture landscape design degree. And my mother is incredibly smart, incredibly intelligent. She's never been very bookish. We joke. So she used to pay my sister and I to do her assignments for her. And I would do worksheets. I was the younger sister. So I got the worksheets, got paid up to $5 a pop for a worksheet. My sister did the papers. And I joke that was really my entrance into this industry. From there, she worked part-time at different garden centers. She would bring me with her when I didn't have a babysitter, which was most of the time in the summer. So I would help out in the garden centers, follow her around to different landscape design calls. And then ultimately, my parents actually started a garden center business when I was in seventh grade. And I was obsessed with being in every single business meeting, helping them start that up, et cetera. So it is really, I would say, like near and dear to my heart. And this industry is it's very privatized and it's these family-owned businesses that have been around for generations and passed down through generations. And there's just so much heart and soul in the industry. But fast forward, I ended up leaving the industry for about 20 years. I got my undergrad degree, did some marketing at General Mills, got my business degree from UCLA, did growth strategy consulting with McKinsey and worked for some different startups, et cetera. But ultimately ended up coming back into this industry about 2 years ago, due to 3 to 5 things, we'll say, or a handful of things. So number one, I noticed that and read that there were all of these new entrants into the green industry as a result of COVID. So the data says that over 18 million new folks entered this industry of plants as a result of COVID. However, the industry pretty much failed them. Like there weren't really tools on how to take care of your plants or how to place plants together, which plants you should be using. And this industry is inherently ungoogleable. So it was this big opportunity that I really feel like wasn't fully leveraged. So that was one. And I started thinking, like, how do I fix this? Like, how do I help IGCs grow? And when I say IGC, I just mean Independent Garden Center.
Yeah.
And so I started talking to some of these garden centers, and I learned something really important, which was that they had finally recently computerized their inventory. So this might sound crazy if you're in an industry like retail, et cetera, where everything has been computerized for a long time. However, in this industry, up until about 5 years ago, you would go outside, you would see which plants looked low, you would call up your stock guy or gal, and you would order it. So it really didn't give tech a way to be able to see into the industry and to help. But that changed about 5 to 10 years ago. So that was interesting. That got the wheels turning. I think another big thing here, this industry is largely handing down from the second generation to the third generation, where the second generation might have been a little bit opposed to technology or different tools beyond their point of sale system. That third generation is coming in and they're like, what the heck? Where are the tools? Like, how do I run this business if I don't have technology for it? And then the final thing is that AI, and I saw this from the other industries I was working in growth strategy consulting, that AI is in a place to really scale expertise. So we're in this really special time where AI can scale expertise. And that really has been the competitive advantage of IGCs, of these landscape designers, but they haven't been able to scale it in the past beyond a certain point. And so with that, I ended up pulling on a co-founder, one of the smartest people I knew in tech, and said, let's tackle this. Let's use AI to really scale expertise here. And that's when we built Plantista.
Very nice. I mean, what a wonderful story, and what an incredible journey, right? Being able to bring it all back home. It really seems like you had to have all that experience and the parts of your journey to be able to get you to this point. So that's great to hear. Thank you for sharing that with us, Ashley. So we're talking today, sort of about the future of work, and technology is obviously a big component of that. And there's going to be different models that exist, not just LLM models, but even just within the organization, different organizational structures. And it really seems like many leaders, they sometimes struggle to go beyond the top-down traditional sort of hierarchy, and they probably live in a little bit more of a rigid type of structure. So I'm curious from your view, bringing in this technology. So what new models of work are starting to emerge, and then why do you believe specifically that there's a needed change to the industry?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind here is that in today's workplace environment and in running and operating a business, is that it's not about knowing everything. And I would say it's more about knowing how to access and scale knowledge and how to make that really readily available. Mm-hmm. And this might sound like sometimes sounds new or scary, but I compare it to this continues to happen and has happened before. When I talk to different garden centers or nurseries, et cetera, I compare it to when the calculator came out. Yes, you could spend in my high school calculus class, I could spend an hour and a half doing this full math problem, and I know how to do that, or I could know which inputs to plug into my scientific calculator, and it could spit out that result for me. So it's not about replacing the expertise, right? Like I have the expertise, I know, but how do I scale that? And if I can scale that, why wouldn't I? Because then I can do more with my time and accomplish more. So I think, sometimes, a lot of times, new things can feel scary, but there are examples from the past where we've already done this. And I think that's a big piece just with AI. Like using a calculator used to be considered cheating, and now it's, completely acceptable. So I would say I would compare AI in the same way of you might see some folks think that it's like cheating today. And I think if you just let yourself kind of go down that road, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, it's not about cheating. It's how do you use it to scale yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And be able to, and so I guess some, senses go deeper than maybe like our own minds, might necessarily, have an understanding in a certain place. So that's excellent. I'm curious too, because there has to be a bit of a shift, right, in the mindset of these business leaders. So you mentioned one, right, like not necessarily having to know everything. Yeah. What other shifts in their mindset do you think is going to be a requirement in order to adopt these new ways of working?
Yeah, I talk a lot with leaders about, and I did this in former like growth strategy work, when they were pushing for new products, et cetera, the same way that I do with AI coaching now. And how do you introduce it to your team? How do you roll it out? And I think that one of the biggest things that I chat with leaders about in this space is it's not about stepping off of a cliff and like going with it, or the big rocket ship that like blasts off never to like come down again. I compare it more to just taking one step at a time. And it's this piece of there should be a lot of iteration, right? And if you're not iterating, if you're not measuring and iterating, then you're doing it wrong, right? That's like the same thing with any new thing that you try. So it doesn't have to be this big, scary, like it works or it doesn't, we go all in or we don't. It's like, okay, what's one thing that like, sucks about your job or your company today? Maybe it's impossible.
What's a hassle?
Yeah, like maybe it's impossible to find information. Like your employees are taking 5 hours searching through the shared drive to find something. And like, what if you could make that more readily accessible? Like start with that. Like, what's the downside of that? And then take the next step and then take the next step. So I think that's the piece of not viewing it as this is a decision and it's, all or nothing. It's iterative. Take the first step and keep taking steps. And all of a sudden you look back and realize how far you've come.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing that I think comes into play here is for a very large organization versus a small business. With the small businesses still being able to move rather quickly, they can adopt some of these technologies or tools much faster. I in the conversations I'm having, or even some of the things that I'm reading, it really seems like large organizations are struggling with where should the guardrails be, right? And trying to put restriction around how these tools can be used. And I get it, right? In some industries, they're either regulated, someone's life, could be on the line, or maybe you're riding an autonomous, type of vehicle. I get it. There's a lot, there should be guardrails when it comes to all that. But I think the pendulum sort of swings in a way to the small businesses if they are able to adopt these tools and just kind of, like you said, try them out and see if they're working, and not having to kind of wade through all the red tape or the bureaucracy that sometimes might be needed in a larger organization.
Totally. And I've worked for large organizations, right? I've seen the bureaucracy and the red tape and all of that. I do think that's where it becomes important to, I think, work with a partner in this space, because like we've seen some of that come up and then we've put in those guardrails, right? So it's all about understanding exactly where the AI is. I almost compare it, I like think of it as like this little baby dinosaur, and you're training it and you're putting guardrails around it. And then you can also, like, one thing that's really important to us at Plantista is we want to scale the expertise. We don't want AI to try and come up with its own expertise because it's not good at that. And so we, have the organizations, we say, bring together your top 5 landscape designers, have them put together these recipes of 5 plants, and then have the AI generate that so they don't have to take 5 hours drawing it out, let's say, but it is scaling that expertise versus trying to create its own version of what that looks like. So that's an example of a guardrail that we put on. Is we say, use these 5 plants when somebody lives in this zone, wants a drought tolerant garden, and is in a full sun coverage, use these plants. And so that's an example of a guardrail, but we have guardrails all over the place. And it's because we're so attuned to what AI can do, what it can't do. And that changes truly every week.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've done the work for them, right? So for the Jurassic Park fans out there, don't look at it as a T-Rex, right? It's more like a Raptosaurus that's been trained from infancy.
It's cute though, and it aims to please.
Away from the ones who eat the plants. So we touched on this a little bit. Well, in certain areas where you have deer, I mean, you have to plan, which I remember the landscaping in New York was very different than anywhere else because you have to worry about them eating your bushes. So,
absolutely.
But you've touched on this a little bit. We talked about guardrails. I want to dig a little deeper into the systems. Maybe you've adopted something in particular that you could share that's working for you. You touched on it a little bit, but specifically around innovation, a lot of companies struggle with scaling innovation. And in fact, Deloitte shows that 76% of executives say scaling innovation is their biggest challenge. And for many reasons, either you don't have the psychological safety for people to take initiative, or you might have a structure where the flow of information never makes it up the chain, so to speak. So I'm curious, because it sounds like you guys have adopted a lot of innovation. Yeah. Are there systems that you've structured or built at Plantista that ensures that innovation is embedded, not just a one-off experiment? If you can share the secret sauce with those listeners, because it sounds like you've cracked the code, we would love to hear it.
Yeah, and I don't know that anyone's ever cracked the code. And I'll also acknowledge as a piece of this that this looks different in publicly traded companies that have to report out on quarterly results, i.e. General Mills, where I used to work and also do some innovation, than a startup, right? Like, so this is all it's gonna ebb and flow, and this is not meant to be like, oh, why isn't everyone doing this? So I do think, and I will acknowledge, in really large companies, and I used to do this pretty consistently, is just like tease out the question of how much are we focusing on our year 1, year 2, year 3 results, and what part of the plan is going towards that, and how much are we focusing on our quarterly results? Because you're going to make different decisions, whether you're focusing on your end of quarter results or your end of year results or your end of year 3 results. And so I would just be the blunt person that probably at the age of like 23, 24 would tease out these questions. And I think that was actually really beneficial in getting people to acknowledge like all the way up the value chain of like, here are the realities, but we also want to make sure that we have a business in year 3 and year 5, not just at the end of Q1. So I'll acknowledge that in big companies. But what we do at Plantista, and I think there are elements of this that work across companies of all sizes. You've heard it before. It's that like customer obsession. But I think one thing in big companies, this was actually something that my team did differently at General Mills. We didn't just look at the data. Data can tell, and I know this from strategy consulting, data can tell whatever story you want it to tell. Like you can get that story to say anything, and it really doesn't tell you much of anything at the end of the day about the customer. We used to do cook-alongs where we would
you mean data is not unbiased?
Yeah, it's wild, right?
There's a single source of the truth.
Yeah.
To a narrative?
It's what you can weaponize data all day. It can be so helpful. I'm so data driven. However, it can also be really not like detrimental too. That's only relying on it. So we used to do like cook-alongs, things like that with our customers at General Mills, because it was like you want to start thinking like them, so that when somebody asks you a question, you're able to just answer from their frame of reference, like from their mindset, versus have to consult your data about what the data says. So at Plantista, from day one, we formed a customer advisory board. So we sell to businesses rather than the end consumer. We're B2B to C. But our first 5 customers, we offered them seats on our customer advisory board. And we actually offered them a little bit of stock as part of that as well. And these were owners of the garden centers and of the landscape design firms that we were working with. And we said, hey, there's going to be a commitment of 10 to 20 hours a quarter. We're going to get you guys all together in these quarterly meetings. We're also going to reach out individually, but you're going to help us shape this product roadmap, and you're going to help us prioritize products, features, and you're going to ballot out, we call it the CAB, in these CAB meetings about which features should be prioritized versus others. And then you're going to be the first ones to test them. And you're going to tell us what's working, what's not, like what's missing a key feature, et cetera. So we never assume that we know what their problems are or what problems they should be solving. Like maybe I know what problems they should be solving, but they don't want to solve those. So like, great, let's solve the problems you want to solve. And then maybe we'll get there. So that's been really pivotal for us. And I would say that's something we continue to have at Plantista. And we have choicefully very different and diverse perspectives in that group. Based on the size of their business, how much they're looking for growth versus not, et cetera. And then I would say the final thing we ask for, not only from that group, but from every single person on the team, whether it's somebody who we contracted with for only a few weeks to help us with one piece of our design model, or maybe it's a horticulturalist that we contracted with for a couple months, I always ask people for ideas. Like, what are we missing? Because everyone comes to things with a different frame of reference, and you're quite blinded by your own frame of reference that you never see these things. And so it's been really interesting to just get ideas from everyone. It doesn't mean you say yes to all those. That would be a nightmare if your leader is saying yes to everything. But it forces you out of your own mindset. And then you start to think a little bit differently, I would say. So the customer advisory board and that asking for ideas from everyone has really helped us.
I mean, you just described design thinking to a T. That's the whole point. You could have a lot of companies struggle with, we've been doing this for 40 years. We know exactly what the market needs. We've been in there forever, right? But that's the biggest mistake you can do, because you're not listening, you're not curious, and not being curious and not listening lacks empathy, and empathy will always win. I love that. I love that you guys are doing that. That's brilliant.
And again, maybe you do know what they need, but like maybe it's not what they want right now.
Validate. You know? Right. Well, you might know transactionally what they need, but what they really need beyond the transaction, that's the stuff that comes to those engagements.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree, because I would love to be in one of those meetings, and I wonder if you almost ask yourself, if you had that list of here's what we should be doing next, and they're not focusing on those, being able to tease out, well, what about this? Or, would this help? And just almost be able to hear their responses. I think it also demonstrates an enormous amount of humility on your part to not say, hey, like, I know what, it should be next. Right. And then the humility really, I guess, lets us listen to their answers and reprioritize, right? Versus what we think. Yeah.
Totally. It's been great for my co-founder and I as well, because, we never have to battle it out between the two of us. We take it to the cab and they make the decision for us.
Interesting. So I'm kind of curious, right? Because sometimes when you have to work with other functions in an organization, there's difficulty in collaborating across those. So what I'm interested in sort of discussing maybe next is, so what role, I guess, does cross-functional collaboration have to play in order then to be able to design the system to be scalable?
Totally. This was something that I don't know how I was tipped off to this. It was maybe in just networking conversations, et cetera, when I was in undergrad. But whenever I was looking for a company to work with, I always looked for I would ask questions in my interviews about the strength of the cross-functional organizations. Okay. So like, for example, if I was going to be going into marketing, I wanted to make sure that the product organization was really strong, and and working in innovation, I wanted to make sure the sourcing and packaging organizations were really strong, because you're only as strong as the rest of the folks on your basketball team.
Sure.
Is kind of how I think about it. And if you go into a company where just one piece of the organization is really strong, the rest are maybe a little bit weaker, that becomes super frustrating. And it's just is like this weight dragging you down. So I would say, like, that's one thing, is just like eyes open, like look for it. How I've found the best way to foster that cross collaboration, whether it's at a big company where sometimes sales and marketing might be at odds with each other, or finance and marketing might be at odds with each other.
Yeah, that never happens.
At the end of the day, it all comes down to aligning incentives. And so this was something we worked with a lot in consulting, of like, okay, what are the metrics everyone's working towards, and how do you align people's incentives, compensation models, their like rewards, etc., all towards one thing. And we're not celebrating your win over that win. It's all a collective win. And really highlighting the roles that each person, as a leader, that each person plays in that. So not just celebrating the person who, maybe crossed home plate, but like, I don't know why I'm doing so many sports analogies today. But like not just celebrating the person who crossed home plate, but celebrating the person that hit the ball to get them there, and like really calling that out. And I think at the end of the day, like people are going to do what makes the most sense for them personally a lot of the time. So like make sure their incentives are aligned in that. And then people just want to be like thanked and celebrated. And so like make sure you're not making them fight over that.
Yes, definitely, a team victory. I don't know, maybe it's because we're in, in the fall, it's October, we're in playoff season. So the baseball analogies work. But you hit on something there that I thought was so important, right? Because as soon as I asked the question, I was thinking, okay, I wonder if she's going to say a common goal. And it seems like, that's always really important, right? Is working towards a common goal. Related to common goals, something that we love to talk about, in our agency, but also here on the podcast, is the importance of purpose, right? We know that purpose-driven organizations, for example, they outperform their market. In fact, I think E&Y back in 2024 put out a report that they outperform their competitors by 42%. So maybe, Ashley, tell us a little bit more about what's the deeper purpose behind Plantista. Why do you think purpose is important? How does it guide you, I would say, in the way that you're building innovation at Plantista?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, at least for me, everything, like all my motivation comes down to purpose. And in anything that I'm doing, like I can put on a great playlist and get my motivation going, and then like that's going to fade at some point. Or I can drink a venti coffee from Starbucks and like get that going, and that's going to fade. And so I think for me, and I don't think I'm alone here, a lot of folks, it's just like, what am I using my time for? What energizes me beyond, what I can just kind of like falsely fuel my body with.
Yeah.
And so that's been really important to me. And you spend so much of your time working, right? Like, why not use it to chase a purpose? So at Plantista, I think one of the biggest things that drives me and the purpose behind Plantista is really helping these businesses grow and prosper in the next generation. So this next generation has and I'm talking like millennials, Zoomers, like all the way down the line, super fragmented attention spans. They're very visual, inspiration for shoppers. And they're purpose-driven themselves. Like if you tell them why they should plant a pollinator garden, they'll plant a pollinator garden. If you tell them why they should plant a drought-tolerant garden, they'll plant a drought-tolerant garden. But this industry hasn't been set up to serve them. And because of that, while the Home Depots of the world, et cetera, are slaying in this space, they're growing. These independent businesses that are massive, they do tens of millions of dollars, are shrinking. And they don't know why. And so I am scared of a world in the not so distant future that if these independent businesses don't step up and use AI to scale their competitive advantage, which is this expertise, like that's what they have to lean on. If they don't do that, I think as soon as 5 years, we'll be in a world where it's just Home Depot and then basically private equity owned garden centers everywhere, which the first thing you do for that is SKU rationalization. Yeah. You cut it down to 50 plants total. And then I'm living in a world where, I only have 50 plants to choose from no matter where I am in the world. That just kind of sucks. So,
age world.
Highest margin. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, I know, because I used to consult with these folks. This is what you do. So I really want to help these businesses be the change, have that player versus victim mindset, versus just kind of sit back, because I think that will happen. I also want to preserve and grow the use of plants. We mentioned some of those beneficial things, like attract pollinators, provide food and habitat for birds, nutritious food, if you think about fire-wise landscaping can actually protect homes from wildfires, which a lot of people don't realize. Like, there's so many beneficial uses, but the information is not made available today in a way that is able to be easily consumed.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the last piece, which is just really making this like information that can feel kind of like tribal knowledge. It's like, oh, folklore. Like, we heard from my grandma who passed it down to this person that if you water the plant this way, like, it'll survive, or things like that. I want to make sure we gather that knowledge and make it accessible to everyone, regardless of their location, regardless of their income. They shouldn't need $75,000 to do a design. Like, you can get that same expertise kind of disseminated through you or to you through an AI model. So that accessibility, especially when we talk about things like the AI Firewise landscaping, becomes really important to me. Of like, how do you serve this info up to people so they can use it?
You said a few interesting things, and I'm curious here what your thoughts on this. I think maybe the smaller players may not realize the democratization that AI is bringing to them, their ability to now compete with the larger stores at the same level. It's an equalizer, right?
Right.
And then there's also the fear. It's like, well, we are more human touch related, but but do you think, like, we've seen AI that can be used to increase creativity, increase connection, and improve well-being? It's a way to enhance the humanology of the side of things, right? So most of the small players, their whole competitive advantage is the human side of it. But what they're perhaps not realizing is that's the value where they can enhance AI in a way that's sustainable, because a lot of the big push towards breaking everything down to a transaction, it's going to feel cold and clinical, and the competitive advantage is going to come from those who feel more human. There's a unique opportunity for the small businesses to tap into that. Is there a fear you're seeing that maybe they're not seeing how they could benefit from this to enhance what they do well now and outcompete some of the big box stores? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I've definitely seen this fear. But I will say it's shifting quickly, which I'm excited to see. So when I used to, stand up and speak at different garden center landscaper conferences as soon as back in January, in terms of the adoption curve, I would say it was very like educational of like, this is AI. Here's what ChatGPT is. And it was like getting folks familiar with that. I then went to a different conference in March, and just the conversations I was having, everyone now knew what AI was, right? But they were in the stage of fear. And then fast forward 3 months later, June, July, I was out in Oregon, and now folks had kind of passed that fear, actually, which was really great to see. And they were ready to adopt, but they were overwhelmed. Like, how do I present this? What do I do? What do I say? And so I think we are really at that overwhelm stage, at least in this industry. And we're not yet to the like implement and iterate stage, which is where I hope that more folks will be as we kind of close out this year and move forward from there. But I do think, I think of AI again as the technology to scale expertise. And I really think of it, particularly in this industry, as the conduit that really opens the door and welcomes folks in so that it opens the door to their creativity and connection and well-being. A lot of times if if a store associate goes up to someone, whether it be at REI or a garden center, and asks, like, can I help you? Can I tell you about that product? That person, if they're a millennial or younger, they're likely going to say no. And they're going to be Googling and trying to look for that information themselves. Because we've been trained to seek a lot of different sources and how we receive our information. We want to see what the reviews say online. We really want to vet it out. Oh, yeah. And so if they shut down that conversation because they don't want to have that one-on-one, then you lose them. And so how do you get them in the door? You get them searching a place where they're going to find the right answers. And then now they feel comfortable. They have their plant list. They kind of know what they want to buy. But now they feel better about asking maybe a question about this plant or that plant. So it's like opening the door so you give them the opportunity to build that creativity and connection.
Wonderful.
Those
Ashley.
are such good points about, and connection, I think, was the key there, is if you make connection the goal, how are we going to do that really with these different generations?
I have a feeling of where you're going to go with this next question, but we ask it to all of our guests, and we call it the love question. And the reason for it is because there's a lot of studies that have shown that organizations that are rooted in empathy and care achieve significantly higher engagement and retention. And we've experienced it. We're living it. How do you see love, compassion, and empathy fitting into innovative work models of the future? Do you think love belongs in business?
I do. I do. And I heard something, actually, I don't know if it was this last weekend, a couple days ago, that really resonated with me. And I think it connects here, which is that people buy from people when they feel understood, not when they understand. And for me, growing up as a marketer, and it's a lot about like, here's what I have to offer. Like, how do I make them understand? How do I make them understand? Like, here's my marketing plan. I'm going to come up with get the copywriter in. We're going to make them understand. But that's not who people buy from. And they just want to feel understood. And then that is ultimately who people buy from. And I think love, empathy, compassion, it's all about understanding where someone is coming from, and meeting them there rather than trying to change them. So it's not saying like, well, you should care about plants and you should look up how to take care of them because plants are great for the world. And so you should do it. Saying like, hey, I understand that your attention span is now fragmented into 1,000 different places, but you still want to impress people with your plants and et cetera. That's all over the internet. Let me understand where you are and let me meet you there. And let me send you a text message every time it's time to do something. So I think that's the piece of that love, that empathy, that compassion. It's really, truly wanting to understand and seeking to understand. And then things will flow from there versus just, trying to be understood all the time.
I think Mike will agree with me that we feel that from you. Absolutely. You have passion and you love for what you're doing. It's felt.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I have a lot. I have a lot of feels.
100%, right? I think it's, keeping in mind that, to love doesn't mean that you got to change somebody to fit your mold, right? I think
it's not
people
true
are
love.
right. Yeah, exactly. And
the truth is, like you said, there are people already interested in plants. So you don't have to convince them. You just have to connect them to your community. They automatically will levitate if it resonates with them. And that's the mistake a lot of marketers make. They have to convince or shout at you. It's like, no. Just connect with the person who's already interested. It's a different approach to them. It's not about like presenting them with a transaction. It's presenting an opportunity for them to be part of something they already desire to be part of.
Right.
And that's not something that happens with traditional methods.
Right.
Oh, this was a wonderful show, Ashley. Truly great insights. We really appreciate and thank you for sharing today with our audience and with us. Now, for the listeners who want to connect with you further or learn a little bit more about the work that you're doing, where would you like them to go and follow up?
Yes. So visit our website, plantista.ai. There is a connect with us feature there where you can actually book time on my calendar. I love chatting with everyone in this space, whether you're a garden center, a landscape designer, someone in this space, someone, who's looking maybe, I don't know, interested in AI Firewise landscape. Like, I am super curious and I love, as you can probably see, talking about this with anyone and everyone. So I would say that would be one spot. And the other spot would be to follow us on LinkedIn. Plantista is on LinkedIn, as well as I personally am on LinkedIn. I'm always sharing different updates, hot takes, things like that. So that would be another great spot.
Beautiful.
Well, Ashley, it's been wonderful to have you. That's it for today's episode of the Bliss Business Podcast. As Ashley reminds us, the future of work is not about replacing humans with AI, but about designing models where humans and technology thrive together. If you found this useful, please share it with a friend, like and subscribe, and we will see you again on the next Bliss Business Podcast.
Thanks.